So earlier this week, I got an email from my friend Jake Hicks across the pond, and he was proposing a discussion around AI. Yes, AI again, but specifically how there were parallels between how we're perceiving AI, or photographers are perceiving AI today, and how they perceived Microstock back in the day. And are there some parallels there that we can learn from? So Alastair Jolly, my co-host, myself, and Jake Hicks sat down for a conversation to see if we couldn't get to the bottom of artificial intelligence, and is it the same thing as Microstock was back in the day?
This is TWiP.
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm Frederick Van Johnson here, luckily, along with my co-host today, is Mr. Alastair Jolly from across the pond. And
Frederick,
what's going on, man? You know we got a special guest waiting in the to chat with us.
He's on this side of the pond with me. We're outnumbering you this week.
Yes, I am the odd man out, and it's the none other than Jake Hicks of Jake Hicks Photography, master of gels and color.
How you doing, guys?
And light.
Thank you for having me on.
How you doing, man?
Hey,
How
Jake.
you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. How many times have I got to be on here to be a host like Alastair? I mean,
You can be a host. In fact, I may let you host the show by yourself. How about that?
I don't know about I'm not arguing over rank here, but
you can be on alone, man. All right,
We've seen you practicing your live streaming.
Yeah.
practicing. Oh, is that what it is now? Just practicing. Wow. Just straight in with the jibes, like off the rip. Oh, okay, I see how it's going to go.
You're pretty good at that gel stuff too, Jake. You should
I'm getting better all the time, practice. That's what Alastair tells me, yeah.
That's it. That's how you get
GP, man. GP.
Yeah. So what we're going to discuss, folks, today is, as you may have seen by the thumbnail, etc., this conversation is going to be about artificial intelligence. I know you may or may not be tired of hearing about AI, but I think this is going to be an important discussion from the context of drawing parallels between generative AI and what happened, if you're old enough to remember, what happened back with when Microstock kind of first came on the scene and just all the things. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to meander into a bunch of other topics. Before we do that, Jake, for the folks that may not have heard the name Jake Hicks or not familiar with your work, they will be after this, obviously, but give us a quick elevator pitch about who you are and what you do real quick.
Based in just outside London, UK, portrait, fashion, editorial style photographer. Been doing it for over 20 plus years, but certainly known for my colored lighting shots. So a lot of very bold, over exaggerated colored gel shots of people. Yeah, that's certainly what my all of my work is. Yeah.
I love it. And we'll have a gallery of your work on the site with the show notes, of course, and jakehicksphotography.com, right? Just head over there and you'll
that's it. Yeah, all
get a
roads,
taste of all the work that Jake you've been working on. Jake, you and I have had conversations over the years. We've gone pretty deep, right, about color and color theory and all the things. But now is it all upended with artificial intelligence and someone being able to put in a prompt in one of these engines and say, hey, make me an image of a beautiful woman wearing a bathing suit lit with colored gels in the style of Jake Hicks. I don't know if that'll work, but theoretically it could work.
Yeah. My images were... I mean, so that's a pretty broad topic with a lot of minefields along the way there.
That's what I do, man. That's what I do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm gonna need to be careful here. I think there is a couple of things that we need to be looking at when we talk about this. One is really how it affects us in our industry directly. So actual photographers, professional photographers, people who take it very seriously, and how AI imagery affects society as a whole. What does that mean in terms of visual medium as well? What is real, and in terms of copyright, like who owns these images, right, and how much of your image can be copied before it becomes stealing. And so there's definitely a huge gamut there. Is AI imagery art? Is it photography if it looks like a photograph? So I think there's a lot of questions that we kind of need to unpack, and I think everybody's going to have different opinions on all of those.
Sure.
So, like me personally, just the kind of 30,000 foot view of my thoughts on it is, no, it's not photography. Is it going to affect my work? No, I don't think so. I mean, hundreds of people, a month steal my images to, use on book covers or audio books or album covers or club nights or whatever it is, menus, like what, So, are they going to now just use the AI tools to kind of make those images themselves? Yeah, probably. I don't think, the people that are going to be using AI imagery to create the work that they want, I don't think we're ever going to be my clients in reality. So am I going to kind of lose money because of AI? No. Are people going to be able to replicate my imagery? Sure they are. Yeah. I mean, and I know that my images were in the original Midjourney pool of inspirational content or whatever it is. So, and I know that you can create images like mine in there for sure. Yeah. But
yeah. And it's like you said, it's an unanswerable kind of minefield of a question intentionally, right? Because it's like one of those, was it Rorschach tests where you just kind of
where do you sit on that? Yeah.
What do you see in the shot? I see bad stuff. Alastair, I want to level set with you as well and get your thoughts kind of along the same lines as Jake. Where you fall on this generative AI kind of thing? Is it photography? Is it not photography? Are you bullish? Are you scared? What do you think?
I'm not scared of it. I mean, I think all of us here today have been around long enough to see many, many changes in photography over the years, especially the transition to digital was, everybody was scared of digital when it came around. Now we've all adopted it. So I'm not scared of it. I'm not, I think there's certain sectors within photography that, are going to, perhaps, be affected by it. But what you're not going to be able to replace is the people and the personal touch. When someone commissions Jake to take a photograph and has a brief and sits down and discusses what they want to achieve, and then Jake visualizes that and conceptualizes it and creates it, that can only be done to a certain point at the moment within AI. Your prompt can only be so good, but you can't replace. I think photographers who work directly with other people to create work for them or to create work of them, I think they're pretty safe that it's not going to take away that personal skill set we have with interacting with people. So
I wonder if we're still experimental with it. I mean that, like from a creative standpoint, being experimental with ideation. Like Jake, if you have an idea for a shot that you want to do, or Alastair, you have an idea for a shot you want to do, instead of sketching it out and doing all the things, you just get in front of your computer and prompt it out and then take whatever's closest and then execute on that. Jake, have you done that? Like that kind of way of using the tool?
No. I mean, I can see why people kind of would do that. And look, if you just want to come home after a long day or whatever, put a Twitch stream on the second monitor and then fire up Midjourney and just throw in some random words and spit out some images and you feel good about that, there is nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with enjoying creating something. But in terms of using it as a tool for me to create, it's only going to be looking at stuff that's already done, right? This is not some magic Pandora's box that is going to be looking at new ideas. It's looking at old ideas, right? And you can say, well, Jake, that's where inspiration is. You're looking at old ideas on the internet, and that is. But for me, I tend to come up with an idea in my mind and then execute it with like testing it, right? So I don't share all the shoots that I do, and I certainly test a bunch of ideas. And I'm obviously in a fortunate position where I can test ideas with people, and a lot of my work is able to be done in a studio environment. I don't need to hire out an elephant wearing flip-flops to make my shots or anything like that. I can do stuff in a studio. I don't need it to be so abstract,
I need to prompt that. I need to take that elephant wearing flip-flops in the style of Jake Hicks.
Exactly right. Yeah. But no, I think you've got to be very careful when you're kind of like inspiration incest, right? Which is what using these kind of AI tools is doing, where you're putting in ideas and it's giving you kind of regurgitated ideas back. I saw somebody recently, I think it was I can't remember who it was, but they put in they wanted a landscape, right? And it spat out a landscape, and in the sky it had this weird grid pattern. I was like, that's kind of weird, right? It's kind of weird. It's because the AI is looking at watermarked stock imagery. It's giving you the actual watermarks in there. And if you say, portrait of a woman or something like that, whatever it is, and it'll have like this kind of jumble of letters in the bottom right. It's emulating a watermark, right? Yeah. So it's you got to be real careful with kind of using it as this inspirational tool. I think if you're giving it the ideas to begin with, I think you should maybe run with it yourself and try and implement it yourself. Yeah.
There's also that thing where, like, when you're in the studio and you're creating something. I mean, I haven't done a lot of studio work in my career, but Jake, you're in the studio and you've pre-visualized something and you're trying to get to that point. There's also those happy accidents that kind of happen along the way where your concept maybe changes and you think, actually, this is looking really good, I'm going to run with this. Whereas you put in a prompt, you get the result, you move on. You've kind of lost that, flexibility to change direction or come up with something that you hadn't thought about,
And I've always said that kind of we have this kind of newer generation of photographers that are maybe a little bit hesitant to kind of experiment or make these mistakes, right? Because I kind of feel like we're encouraged, or we feel like we ought to share everything that we produce, right? Everything's got to be shared. We've got to, post it on Instagram, did a shoot today. Like, you don't have to. It's okay to make mistakes. I try ideas that don't work out, that never see the light of day, and that's okay. And I've always been this kind of firm believer that these kind of mistakes that we make are the seeds of creativity, right? Because you made a mistake, it didn't work out. It's just human nature for you to go, I need to try something different. And it's that process of you trying something different that is actually you being creative, right? The very notion of doing something different is creative. So these happy accidents, I think, happen far more than people realize. Yeah.
And that's where you find the fun, though. That's what I wanted to get to that, Jake. I don't know. Maybe that's the common thread that runs through this argument of AI versus non-AI. What's photography? What's not photography? What's a photographer? What's not a photographer? And that's the creative journey of getting to the end result and being satisfied with it enough to share it with people. Like the path of least resistance could be represented by AI. Like, I really just need this shot of a landscape, with a white horse running through a green field. Boom. Because I need it for this ad campaign or whatever. Boom. Get a bunch of versions. Great. I'm done. Right. But if you find happiness in the journey of having a germ of an idea while you're in traffic and then putting it together later, that's the piece that you're skipping over with AI, right, Jake? And that's kind of the piece that you like, right?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people who you see kind of, pro AI or generative AI who are like, I don't have the abilities that you have. I don't have the skills that you have, but I've got these ideas in my head that I want to get out. And, I think it's a great tool for them. Maybe they don't have the time to, learn to do it or whatever. That's fine. It's okay. And I fully respect people who, do seek a lot of joy from, I've had this crazy idea in my head that I've never been able to get out there, and now they're able to do it. And that's great. I think all people should be creative. I think we are, as humans, we are all inherently creative. And somewhere along the lines, some of us kind of forget that and others kind of follow it a bit more.
Yeah. And you recently did a workshop or an event with Rob Grimm, right? We know Rob Grimm from his work doing beverage photography and education and all the things. I had a conversation with him on TWiP a couple of weeks ago where he was explaining how he's incorporating in-camera AI into his work, i.e. a high-definition screen in the background with a mid-journey rendered background, and then he builds the foreground and lights it, accordingly and all that. And he's able to bring the best of both worlds into his workflow. Is Jake Hicks going to move in that direction? Like, do you see yourself ever doing the synthetic backgrounds?
Yeah, I've certainly done versions of it. So I've used like a stock imagery, like a stock image, and it was portrait, and I needed it in landscape. So I kind of, generative AI gave it a lot more. So I mean, like, 2/3 of it was fake, right? If you like. Yeah. So I'm using I'm using like a stock image as its base, and then I'm kind of extrapolating it out from there. So yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying I never use. I've certainly used the generative AI stuff in Photoshop. I crop out an elbow or something like that, and then boom, it's just 2 seconds. Of course, there is certainly convenience there that is going to be saving us time. I'd have to go and get another image where the elbow is in there, bring that in, copy and cut it out. So it's definitely saving time in post to do little bits like that. I think the biggest concern that I have about this whole thing is people trying to trick people into thinking that AI images is photographs. Like that's where I draw the line, and it's a goddamn hard line in my book, and there is no excuse for it. Like there really isn't. Oh well, I'm just it's just art. It's all art at the end of the day. No, you are trying to trick people into thinking that what you're doing is a photo, and it's not. Like if you're going to do it, fine, but at least own it, right? Like hang a print on the wall, of course, yeah, but don't try and tell me that it's an original, right? Just be honest with yourself. Yeah.
But we're humans, right? And humans will find a way.
Currently
we're humans, but we'll find a way to kind of, it's a path of least resistance thing. And I was having a conversation over dinner a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how theoretically someone could, while we're sitting at dinner on their iPad, generate a website, generate all the copy for the website, SEO friendly, clickbait heavy, all that, generate a bunch of articles for the web, all that, and then generate a portfolio for the website, generate a fake bio for themselves, generate a fake image for themselves, all that from an iPad while sitting and waiting. This was not possible years ago, right? This was impossible to do. Now it's relatively simple to do that and hang out a shingle and throw a PayPal link on there to book me and the Calendly and the whole 9 yards. They could spoof the whole thing multiple times over. So like Alastair, in that, I mean, you have a long history in shooting like weddings and portraits and all that. Like putting that hat on from your past, how do you feel about that from a now anybody can get money from the crowds if someone's gullible enough to fall for an AI-generated image and not recognize AI-generated copy.
Yeah, but that's the scenario you described there is them promoting themselves. They still have to go do the job. Like they still have to go photograph the wedding and still and still do it. And you only mess that up once, and suddenly the community in the world knows that you messed it up. So there's something that's running through my head just now is this thought that people are concerned that AI is suddenly going to make all clients not value photography. There are clients who've never valued photography. There are clients who value it to the nth degree. Those people who really value photography are still going to value it, and they're still going to want to hire Jake, or they're going to want to hire photographers to do the job. Those who have never valued it, they're going to use AI, but that doesn't change the balance in that sense. There's always been people who've just wanted to use cheap copies or cheap fakes or whatever. I still think the big clients in the world might even start valuing photography even more. Because we've spoken about this before on the show, Frederick. We're seeing a resurgence in film photography, where people are really loving getting back to the analog nature of taking photography on film, developing it themselves, because it's I hate to say it's almost kind of unique at the moment. It gives you that little extra flag of uniqueness that you're shooting film. So maybe as AI becomes all this noise, what's going to set you above the noise is the fact that, you do build the sets and you light and you choose the gels and you choose the model and you create the vision, pre-visualize something and create it live for the photographers, for the client. So, it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe there, in some sense, there's an opportunity for people with the skill set to rise above it, and people who don't value it, they never will. So
we had the same fear mongering, 15 years ago, whatever it was, with stock photography, right? I remember back then we all like, oh my God, this is the end. People are selling images for $1. Like, oh, this is the end of photography. That's it. We're all going to be out of jobs. Like that was definitely the consensus back then as well. And it didn't affect most people, if any, really, because like you said, Alastair, it's like the people who want to spend nothing are not your clients. That's not going to change. Right. The people who are giving you, 5 or 10 grand are not immediately just going to go, do you know what? Yeah, no, we're just going to start using AI imagery. No, absolutely not. To your point there, I do think that maybe moving forward, I can see more of an importance for photographers to be a bit more open with themselves rather than just hiding behind their work. I think we may have to kind of be a little bit more comfortable with putting us as the human behind the camera out there. Putting yourself out there, being on camera, talking BTS, or just trying to put yourself and be a bit more real rather than just my work needs to speak for itself. And I totally get 100%. That. That's absolutely fine. But I do think we kind of maybe ought to be a little bit more inclined to put ourselves out there, the name, but behind the work rather than just the work itself.
Very interesting. I had a conversation. Frederick. I had a conversation very recently with a friend of mine. A phenomenal wedding photographer, like maybe one of the best in the industry, but is losing those inquiries to people who are crushing it on social media. But maybe they're not good. They're not as good photographers. They're not, certainly not up to the standard that they are. But they keep themselves behind the camera. They don't, they're not playing the social media game, and therefore, my advice to them was, look, you're going to have to get your personality out there, because ultimately that's what people are. That's the differentiator. People are hiring you. They're not hiring the camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then on top of that, one of the other things is just the like Jake, you brought up the Microstock flow. So if we go back in time, right, it was first there was the commercial photographer. Oh, I need to hire Jake Hicks to shoot this ad campaign because I need these images and they need to be perfect. Here's the art director, yada yada yada, right? The next step down from that was stock photography. Like, okay, maybe I can find an image and not hire a Jake, but it's going to be expensive, $5,000 or whatever, but that's cheap because Jake would have cost me $25 or whatever, right? So
absolutely,
the next step down from stock was when, iStock and all those guys started showing up with Microstock, and now I could get that shot for a couple of bucks. Right, which changed everything, right? And now it brought up the level and the quality of what people could get for next to nothing on images, decimating those other markets, or putting a dent in them at least. And then the next thing was free, right? Like Pexels and Unsplash and all those were just like, it's free, just use it however you want to use it, right? So now, is the next level, like you brought up in your email to me, Jake, is the next level down or left or forward, whatever, generative AI? So instead of all of that stuff that I just mentioned, now you don't even have to go to Pexels. You can just punch in a couple of words and out comes what you had in your mind's eye. If that's the case, then should we care, right? Is it like photography didn't die because of Microstock and iStock and all those guys? No. It changed. So is this the same thing, or is this something different? I don't know.
I think it'll be the same thing as the stock thing. I don't think it's going to affect, choose my words carefully here, but proper photographers. Choose your words carefully, man. Just blurt it out. You know what I mean? Like, people who kind of know what they're doing and have been doing it a little while, and can produce a half decent image. I don't think it's going to be affecting those people. I mean, like you said, I'm sure you do articles all the time, Frederick, and I'm sure you've grabbed article or thumbnails for YouTube videos and that sort of stuff. Boom, it's just like you were never going to go out and pay a photographer to go shoot that. Like that was never. You're not taking any money away from anybody by using an AI image in your thumbnail at all, right? So. I don't. It probably will mean that less of my images get stolen in reality. Like that's the way that I look at it.
Right. Or does it?
Yeah, you look
right?
at
is the reality
you look at
that they're gonna get stolen, just a different way of stealing them, right? Since the soul of your work is already in the machine, right? So is it stealing if they generate an image that would not have been possible had they not ingested your image or your body of work?
Well, this is the copyright issues that I think we're going through now as well. And there's been a couple of recent court cases where photographers are trying to take other people to court for using images. I think there was like a famous one recently with Kat Von D, the tattooist, who used a famous image of Miles Davis, and she copied it like for like on the tattoo. And I mean, she won the case, which is fine. I'm absolutely fine with her winning that case in terms of from an artistic point of view. I was just kind of curious if that was 5-10 years ago, would she have won the same case? Because she literally shared images online of her copying the image, like literally in the shot copying it. So it's copying. It's exactly the same, right? And she's priding herself on it being exactly the same. But I kind of wonder, like, we are seeing a shift from what I've seen in a couple of copyright court cases, being won by the person copying that perhaps I wouldn't see winning 10 years ago.
Yeah. Has the society's opinion on copyright kind of been diluted as we see more and more tools able to generate or be built on the soul of the images that came before it, type of thing? So are people becoming more lenient towards it?
Exactly, yeah, because these cases are being, decided by a jury of regular people, right, who are on Instagram, who are on Facebook, who are seeing these images and are seeing that level of content. It does kind of bring me on to my concern. So you asked me, does it concern me with my work? Not hugely. I do see like the generative AI work being an issue for society as a whole, because I think we kind of underestimate the power that imagery has on us. Like, we cannot unsee an image when we see it, right? This is, this is what the foundation of semiotics is as well. Like, it's ingrained in us. You can't undo it. So you can create an image and somebody see it, and even if you hear later on that it's fake, you still cannot unsee that. Like the classic ones being, Trump being arrested and dragged down the street and that sort of stuff. Like, you cannot unsee that, and that will have an effect on your subconscious, whether you like it or not, when it comes to making decisions, whether it be voting and all those sorts of things as well. That's an extreme level. Another thing was, this happened a year or so ago, and I kind of mentioned it, but we as humans are pretty lazy. If we don't know something, I know we're all guilty of doing this, but we go, what is that? Let me just Google that a second, right? We've all done that. And the result that we get back, rightly or wrongly, we do kind of all just take as gospel, right? Oh, it's like, okay, cool, right? That's the answer. Like, there's no quibbling it. We just immediately go, boom, that's the answer, right? And fine. The issue becomes is when we start to do that with imagery. And like a year or so ago, there was this image going around of a baby peacock, and you can do it now. You can type in baby peacock. And you're like, oh, what does a baby peacock look like? And you type it in, and what comes back is an image of like a bird with brightly colored feathers, but it's kind of small and it's kind of cute. And everybody just assumed that that's what it was, right? And it's not. That's not what a baby peacock looks like at all. It's just a little brown, scruffy thing. But it shows to you that you can very easily kind of manipulate like knowledge pretty quickly because of how quickly something like that gets disseminated. And what I mean by that is just the sheer volume of imagery that AI can pump out, right? Me as a professional photographer, like maybe I'm going to share, I don't know, like 100 half-decent images a year, right? And, an AI can do that in an afternoon, and they all be unique and they all be of the same quality. So you're going to have this just huge, just vast quantities of visual data hitting the web all the time. And that is going to kind of shift the way that we are kind of seeing things and our understanding of it, especially with people as well. Like if you like portraits, like everybody in an AI image is absolutely porcelain perfect, like just dropped off the tree of life, impeccable, right? Like, and that's fine, but it's not realistic of humanity, right? So I think we just got to be careful with the sheer volume of this data that is being pumped out there, and as well, what that means is like I mentioned before, we're going to have this AI incest where they're going to be learning off each other. So if I go into an AI generator now and I ask it to produce an image of a baby peacock, it's going to use the fake image as its reference, right? So this is just going to perpetuate over time, right? And you know, especially as we have more and more of these images hitting the web, it's going to be huge.
And it's interesting you talk about, you know, the danger of AI, you know, having impacts on the future of, you know, decision making, both here in the UK and in the US. We're moving. It's an election year, you know, and I've saw some articles today about, you know, discussions about should we ban, you know, imageries of politicians being able to be made by these tools during election season, election years, that type of stuff. Because, yeah, you're right, you can't unsee images. You know, I'll forever think that the Pope wears a big white puffer jacket, you know, because I've seen him in it. You know,
so difficult to unsee that.
So it'll be really good. And then you talk there about, you know, Googling a baby peacock and it being misrepresented in the search results, and you naturally wanting to believe those search results. Frederick and I were involved in an interesting conversation. We were judging a competition recently, and there was a street photographer who won the street category with a stunning image taken in Portugal. And once we announced the winner, we were inundated with a few folks saying, "Oh, this is Henri Cartier-Bresson. This is a Bresson picture. He's, you know, who's the greatest street photographer of all time. And, you know, this guy's just entered a Bresson picture into the competition, and now you've made him the winner. This is crazy. This is crazy." What's actually happened is his picture is so good that it had been miscredited by several people online as being a Bresson. You know, it's so good it could be Bresson, and suddenly the search engines think it's a Bresson image. So when people Google the image, they're saying, "Oh, this guy's copied Bresson," but it's his image, and people have, you know. So you can't believe what you search, and you have to do even more due diligence now. And
I think you should do,
yeah. And I think going forward, like, you know, listening to my kids research stuff about history and stuff, they're going to, you know, that young generation is going to have to double down on doing their due diligence and believing anything. And I just hope they're not too lazy and that they actually have to be even more prone to double checking things than we ever were, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing, though, because Jake, you hit it right on the head with the incestuous nature of, you know, the dog eating its tail of AI, right? And at what point does it just break down? But I would go on to layer on top of that. There's that incestuous nature, and, you know, the peacockness of it. It's putting out images that aren't correct but seem plausible and believable.
Exactly. Yeah. When it's on that kind of cusp, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, and I don't have time to research that, but yeah, okay,
right?
It's like a baby peacock. Yeah, it's a baby peacock. I'm gonna put that in my newsletter, right? And then the layer on top of that, though, is the echo chamber of humanity. You know, because when someone gets some information from the internet and they, in their heart of hearts, believe it to be true, they're going to go and just verbally spew that out to other humans and tell them the same thing, right? Yeah. Which is what we see. You know, Alastair, you mentioned this is an election year. That's very similar to how we got in the situation that we're in right now, where people just believing what they hear on face value, and it's repeated over and over again. So they believe it in their heart of hearts, so much so to do things that they shouldn't be doing. So in our world, how does that translate? Or how do you even mitigate that if, you know, someone is like, Jake, in your situation, someone is looking at a body of work that is in your style, but it's not you, but it was AI generated by you, and they believe that was generated by John Doe. John Doe is the best commercial photographer I know. He is a master of colored gels. Look at the intricacies of how he manages to transition from color to color. He's mastered it, right? When it's really you've done it. Now you show up and say, no, that was my work. Now you're the liar, Jay, because
you're right. Because
it's like religion. They've already invested in believing this thing over here. There's no way you're going to change their mind to believe something else.
Truth is based on volume, and that's where I have an issue with it. Is because of the sheer volume of kind of fake data or synthesized data that is being pushed out there. I.e., AI generated images. It's just the sheer volume of it that I don't think many people are kind of comprehending when you consider that the amount of fake images that are going up onto the internet versus kind of real ones of actual real things is definitely gonna shift hugely towards the AI side of it.
And the case law is being written right now. I mean, what was it? Just this past week, as we record this is we're February 15th, 2024, day after Valentine's Day. I think it was earlier this week or last week. Sarah Silverman, you guys know the comedian Sarah Silverman? Yeah. So she had filed a lawsuit, I think, against OpenAI for ingesting her material and her comedy into the engine, and it could, I guess, spew out jokes like her. She lost that lawsuit against OpenAI, right? I mean, and
I'm telling you, man, we're seeing more of that.
People were going in and having it write Sarah Silverman jokes, because it had the reverse effect, I think, that she was looking for. Because people would go in and say, write me a Sarah Silverman joke about whatever, and it would just spew out this horrible dad joke level quality, right? Yeah. And they were like, if that's what Sarah Silverman does, then, I'm not going to hire her for any gigs, right? So it has the reverse effect of it. And I wonder if that translates over to us as well, over to the photography world. So
that's not just stealing work though. That's tarnishing someone's reputation as well. Like, it's not just if it says these are images by Alastair Jolly and then they're all terrible, then it's not. That's even worse than them looking as good as mine, right?
True.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. Yeah. So
you guys mentioned competitions and that sort of thing as well. That that's a very hot topic at the moment with AI imagery and competitions. And I mean, I kind of messaged I did a post in my community. I just going, I'm going to be talking about AI on on TWiP. Hopefully, I don't cancel myself by saying something that I shouldn't, regardless about AI artists. And it is a very there is a lot of opinions come in very 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 quickly on that, and they do range from I love creating AI art, here's my AI art, to people going, they should all be catapulted onto the moon, to people who are like, you can do it, just don't call it photography and that sort of thing. But when it gets into this, like entering these AI art into competitions and them winning prizes, it starts to definitely dilute the value of photographic competitions, right?
And that's the honesty.
Regularly doing it, yeah.
That's the honesty thing you spoke about. Frederick and I have judged a couple of competitions recently, which have an AI category, right? So there's a category within it specifically for AI to give a place for that work to be judged as it is, and people are honestly putting it in there. We'd seen over the last few years portrait categories and landscape categories where there's AI imagery in it, and up until recently, we were experienced enough that we could tell these were AI images. The portrait with the person with 6 fingers is probably, an AI image. It's getting harder. It's getting harder and harder to judge it. And we've been through this curve of people deliberately entering AI images to try and spoof the competition, try and win it. Happened in the Sony Awards, where the guy was quite open about the fact he put in an AI image to see how it would stand up. Interestingly, in a competition recently that had an AI category, Frederick and I also saw people putting real photographs into the AI category to try and fool us that way around as well. We're like, come on, give us a break,
Jesus Christ. I mean, when there's prizes and things on the line or monetary gain and sort of stuff, people people are always gonna do that, and you can call them out, and it comes under the guise of just hustle culture, isn't it? Just like it's not. No, you've just been a dick, really. If I'm honest,
Yeah.
I don't think
they're trying to create a story, trying to create a situation where they can call out the brand or the competition runner and saying, "Hi, I fooled you, and look how it's supposed to be a photography brand, but we fooled you with this image." But it was quite the turn of events to see traditional photography being entered into the AI category for one reason or another. But it was.
Let me ask you this then, guys. Go on. Sorry, go on. Finish. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, in the image that won the AI category, it's a phenomenal image, phenomenal image as a standalone image. We can debate whether it's a photograph or not, but as an image, it's
not a photograph,
incredible.
But
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll link to that contest from the show notes. You're going to say something, Jake?
Yeah, I was just. It's an interesting kind of feeling and process that we go through, and I mean, you guys are both photographers and have been for many years. But if you're I don't know, just browsing, morning coffee or something like that, you browsing Instagram, and you stop on an image and go, oh wow, that's beautiful shot, and I really enjoyed that. That's really cool. That's pretty impressive. And then you kind of dig a little deeper and you find out it's AI. How do you feel, Frederick, when that happens to you?
Sorry, I had myself muted. That is a good question, and that's a good segue because I was going to bring that up. I'm different, right? Because I think because I am in this industry, and I love photography and I love photographers, and I appreciate the art, and I know the effort that goes into the artisanship of photography. I'm going to feel some kind of way if I'm looking at an image that's not generated using the techniques I've become accustomed to. However,
but when you originally saw it, you thought it was a photo.
When I originally saw it, I thought it was a photo. Then I found out it wasn't a photo. Yeah. So if it was me, I'd be pissed, right? It's photographer, podcaster, TWiP, Frederick, smug mug, Flickr guy. I'm gonna be pissed because that's disingenuous, and you're
Alastair?
damaging. You're damaging. But there's another side of this, though. The other side of it is if I'm not me, if I am just I'm a consumer and a lover of art, and I see this image and it moves me, it hits something in my soul, and I'm like, oh, this image is fantastic. And then later I find out that it was put up as a real photo, and now I know it's AI. I don't know that I would care as much as a photographer, because it's all about what I'm seeing and how it makes me feel. It's the end result of it and not the process. The photographer cares about the process and the turmoil and the hardship it went to get there. Yeah. The end consumer doesn't care how the Sistine Chapel was. Maybe they care about Sistine Chapel, but
I know what you mean.
You don't care about the paintbrushes that were used or the ladder or any of that stuff. You just want to see the art, right?
But it's kind of weird, right? And I absolutely agree with both of you. And I would say that I feel betrayal though as well, right? Mm-hmm. I do feel like kind of betrayed about it. It's just like, God damn it, I felt this way because I have to agree with you, Freddie. I am somebody who is, technique orientated with regards to I'm seeing an image and I'm going, oh yeah, he must have been there, and that a little bit of long exposure there was nice. Maybe he's moving the cam. Like I'm looking several steps deeper, and then for all of that just to be whipped away and just gone, oh, they just typed in eight words, job done. Yeah, you do feel kind of betrayed about that, but it's kind of a weird one, right? Because you go, let's say you went into a restaurant and you sat down and you had a burger, and it's just like, oh, the burger was pretty tasty, and you go to the waiter and it's just like, yeah, a burger was tasty. That's weird. It kind of tasted like a Big Mac or something like that, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it was a Big Mac. It's like, well. What? No, I just walked into a restaurant and, sorry, so you said you enjoyed it. No, I did like it, but so what's the problem here then? And it's like, there is that kind of weird betrayal, right? Because you feel like you're being tricked, right? It's like, yes, you did enjoy it, but I thought it was something else,
Yeah.
It's the context of how you've consumed it, right? It's how, like when you're looking at a photograph, if I'm looking at a bunch of, an AI category Instagram account, no, that's impressive. That's impressive. If I'm looking at, landscapes of Instagram, and looking at all these beautiful things around the world, and you look at one and you think that's incredible, and then it's AI generated, and the person's quite plainly trying to, palm it off as a photograph. Super pissed off, super, betrayed with that type of thing. But can I just simply appreciate something as being good, irrelevant of how it's been produced? I don't think I ever have. I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to know how it's been done. We were talking. It wasn't that long ago. Going back to the competition thing, it wasn't that long ago that we had to have a separate category for anything that had used Photoshop.
Yeah,
you would have a Photoshop category, right? Because that wasn't real photography; it had been retouched. So I'm like, so now I think, well, am I just being an old dinosaur and thinking
exactly,
that AI is not photography? So
I mean, because you're absolutely right.
Been here before.
We did it with digital and film. We did it with autofocus and manual focus. Well, I mean, if you're going to cheat like that, you hardly really call yourself a professional. And like we did it with black and white and color film. There was plenty of color
35 mil, 120 mil. Yeah,
I mean, it was just like you're shooting in color. It's just like absolute heathen. Just don't even bother. It's just disgusting. Like, so you're absolutely right, Alastair. We have been there. We do need to be kind of careful that we're not caught on the doddering old man side of things.
I mean, even the RAW versus JPEG, right? It was both ways. I mean, if you're a real photographer, you're going to shoot JPEG because it's like slide film. You shouldn't need to have the latitude in there. And then other photographers say, well, if you're a real photographer, you're going to shoot RAW, so you can have the flexibility in post in order to change it. There's never a right answer.
It's tough.
Go ahead, Gene.
No, just lastly on that note, and it is always that even with regular images now, I've certainly shared images or people have seen images and just like, I need to see the unretouched version of that. Well, why? Like, what do you mean? I need to see how much you've done in post. Okay, like, do I also need to show you what the model looked like without makeup on as well? Like, how far back do we go? Like, like where do we draw the line here on what you consider to be okay, right? Like, it's like, where do we draw that line?
Yeah, but again, the people asking those questions, Jake, are going to be the people that are in the industry. It's not going to be a normal photographer or a normal consumer of the image. A normal consumer of the image that does not have a photographic background is not going to be asking those details. They're going to be consumed with the story that you as the artist was trying to tell them, which is what you want, right? You don't want people, how is this sausage made? You want to taste the sausage and enjoy the rest of your day, right? That's it. But then there's the sausage makers that get a hold of that same sausage. Maybe sausage is a bad analogy.
Loving where you're going with this.
As I traverse down this rat hole and dig myself deeper into. But you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, if it's if someone is the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's all about story, right? And I've been struggling with that for years. Is how do you tell stories? People want to hear stories. We're human creatures that survive on story and telling other people's stories, which is what photographers do, but in a single frame. So how do you reconcile that? As a photographer, you don't, right? With AI, it's just another tool that you may or may not like, and it's
because there is no story behind it. Yeah, right.
Unless you force one. Like I was doing this experiment. In fact, I'm doing a talk at this conference called Photoclave here in the Bay Area in a couple of weeks, and part of the talk is about the idea of using AI as an entertainment journey kind of tool versus a Photoshop level meticulous to the pixel creation tool. And what I mean by that is, during the presentation, using ChatGPT, I generate a character and have a conversation with this character. Like I tell GPT to role play into you are a creature of the forest that has been placed there to do X, Y, and Z when people come to the forest, whatever, right? And then I ask that creature a bunch of questions and just have a dialogue back and forth. And then I ask it to describe what it looks like, right? So then it gives me a description of what it looks like, which I then place in a generative AI engine like Midjourney or Leonardo.ai, and now I can see it. I can see this thing that I've been having a conversation with. And then I generate this, a script for it and have like 11 Labs, which does voice generation. Give it, I'll tell this ChatGPT thing to monologue about its worldview for a paragraph. Take that paragraph, throw it into a speech generation engine and tell it to create a creepy voice or whatever. And now I have a photo, I have a personality that I can have a conversation with, and I know what it sounds like. So none of this
feels like a lot of streams getting crossed there.
It is, but from a creation standpoint, it's fun, right? I'm creating.
It's absolutely
it's fascinating, absolutely.
But it's not.
No
it's
denying
not
that.
Pixel. Yeah, it's not to the pixel like Jake Hicks level meticulousness about how all this stuff's going to fit together. It's about maybe I'm entering a world that I know nothing about, right? I'm going in here and having conversations with these entities. It completely left field of what a traditional. I think part of the takeaway from that is there are other ways to experience this AI stuff without looking at it as an analog to Photoshop or this is the end all be all for creation. What if you lean into more of the storytelling side of it and release control and let it do what it's going to do? Is that still art, right? Is it still everything I just described? Is that art, or is it
everything?
It still is.
In a given form, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, and
deliberately doing something to create some piece of art. The concept of deliberately going out there and creating something, and as you've just explained, you've created an artistic format that you wanted to do. That it's art for sure.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
The new Google version can now animate that into video as well, like instantly, which is crazy. I was testing that. And
it's so nuts. There's so much to talk about. Jake, you got to come back on, man. We got to have you on. There's so many. I feel like this episode was more of like a table of contents. And we need to.
I mean, all of this
into
really extrapolated on. Yeah. I would just. Go on.
There's one area that I've been thinking about, Jake. You and I have had long conversations about our education in photography, right? About the traditional going to college in the UK, learning how to do photography, and that kind of journey that we've been on. I wonder how that world is going to change. How is education of photographers going to change? How are they going to be taught to use these tools? Who makes the decisions how they're taught to use these tools? I think it's going to be fascinating for that younger generation coming up to see how did they force the direction of the use of these tools. It's going to be fascinating to watch as we move into retirement from this industry and watching it. It's going to be absolutely incredible, and it's going to happen quite quick.
I would. That's the thing that I think many people are kind of maybe not taking fully appreciating at the moment is how quickly this is. This is moving. Like, you think about kids entering school today, like for the first time. How many of those kids are going to have jobs that are just simply not invented yet? Like most of them are not going to have jobs that have even been invented yet at the time they start learning. So I think that there's just going to be this huge growth, and as we've seen with AI art, and speaking to somebody who was fairly high up in AI at the time, and he was like, "Look, we thought this was decades away. We really thought this was decades away. And we really thought that this generative art that we're talking about here was going to be the last thing that was going to be solved, right? It was really just going to be, so many other levels of AI were going to be done long before we were able to create art. And, the reason being is just because of the data that it's getting. It's just everybody was on board. Everybody was giving it, here's 4 images. Which one do you, the human, prefer? This one. That's it, right? And that's AI learning as to, okay, so you like these pretty people more than these other not so pretty people. Like this is what you define as being good. And you just extrapolate that as millions of times. That's how the AI was able to learn just so incredibly quickly, was by how many people were actually giving it the data that it craved. But that is only going to grow, right? You look at 18 months ago when I had a free Midjourney account to check it out. I mean, it's like night and day to what it is now. You can't even, it's just not even the same piece of software hardly. It's just incredible where it is now. I will just add one final thing on this, and that is my advice to people kind of playing with this. Absolutely play with it and enjoy it, and don't feel any shame for creating stuff with AI. Absolutely play with it. But my one real, kind of piece of advice for this is to, if you are going to play with it, then, and if you are going to share the images, do it on a separate account, right? And I cannot stress to you how important that is. If you're a photographer, is to not mix in AI art with your actual photographs on your profile. It's not a good look. And more importantly, that we are going to see a huge shift with regards to how social media, like Instagram, mainly Meta, is going to be treating AI images. And if they sniff out that it is an AI image, it's just going to be crushed in the algorithm, and all your other real photographs are going to be crushed alongside that as well. And there's many, big names out there. I mean, Solstice Retouch and Chris Knight, like all those guys have separate random named accounts that you'll never find because they're playing with it, right? Absolutely play with it, but they keep it separate. Absolutely it's not under their name in any way. It's very, very separate because it will be crushed in the algorithm once they're able to do it. And Instagram is doing it now. Meta is doing it now. That, like, those AI accounts that you see, like, incredible images, but they're not getting any traction because Meta knows that they're AI. So they are being crushed. So do keep those images separate from your main work. Yeah.
I want to end on this. I'm going to put this to both of you guys and see where your sensibilities lie. So are you familiar with the idea of AGI, artificial general intelligence? Not just AI, artificial general intelligence. So in a nutshell, I'm no AI expert, but in a nutshell, AGI is basically the singularity, as it were, when computers are as intelligent as humans are and can make decisions and do all the things that we can do and are imperceivable from being different from us from a conversational standpoint. Beyond the uncanny valley, beyond all that stuff, it's just like you wouldn't know you were having a conversation with an artificial being if it didn't tell you, right? So
Interlinked.
and that's here. That's here. So they, like you were saying, we were thinking these things are years or decades off. This is around the corner, they say. OpenAI says this AGI stuff is literally, it's probably working already. We just haven't seen a release version of it. So then, for the context of this conversation, what happens when there's an AGI, which for all intents and purposes is a sentient life form, right, that can make decisions and all that. There's an AGI that now has photography skills and artistic fire in a certain direction. Like, this AI feels like it must tell the story of homelessness in Liverpool, right? So that's its focus, and it renders a bunch of images that are photographic quality based on that, and they look great. This thing, it writes its captions, it does it, for all intents and purposes, is a photographer that's telling a photo story, and it's an important story, and it's moving, it changes opinions, all the things that photography is supposed to do. Jake, you first. This entity is on the scene. How do you perceive this entity? Is this something that should be burned at the stake and killed before it reproduces? Or is this just another peer in the peer group that we get to work with? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't stem the flow of that tide, right? I mean, that's, if you're probably right in that that it is around the corner, and I would argue that the data is there. It's just the processing power that is required. And as soon as quantum computing becomes more of a more of a thing, then it's like the sky's the limit for that. Because you're probably right in terms of the code is there. It's just like the sheer amount of processing power that is required to then give you an output from that code is probably vast. So yeah, I do believe that you're probably right in that it's coming around the corner. I mean, then you're just talking like another photographer, right? Jeff is now my competitor. Okay, he's he's a synth.
He's not real.
But like, he's now my competitor. I guess you could call it like that. And then your argument was going to be, well, Jeff doesn't need to pay rent, so he's going to charge $5 for his image, whereas you're charging, a lot more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then I think you just got to keep pushing forward in terms of being creative, right? You got to be the one that is reinventing yourself a little bit and try and do something else. I mean, wedding photographers, that's never going to be an issue in my opinion, because you like you just said, you have to go out there and do it and be there and actually generate these images of the real people. So they're okay. I think
Jeff doesn't need fed at the wedding though.
No, that's true. Yeah. He's probably not going to dash off after the first dance.
He's there for the whole thing.
I can see it. Alastair,
I'm just having flashbacks to trying to get something to eat at a wedding and thinking, man, Jeff has one up on me already. He doesn't have to be fed. He has to be plugged in though, probably. My initial thought there when you started talking about AGI though is what happens when AGI gets combined into something from Boston Dynamics. The robots they're making. It's just, they'll be able to physically go.
Tesla,
they'll be able to physically go to the wedding and take photographs, and jump over the fountains and not fall in them and all that kind of stuff. So interesting times.
I still think you're gonna you need to be creative, right? AI is at the moment, and probably for a good while, is only going to be feeding off what you give it, right? So I mean, I'm always of a belief that for me and my work, I just need to be pushing forward and doing something new and trying to generate new ideas, come up with new ways of seeing things, and that's the job, right? I mean, it sounds crazy when you write it down, but each year it's like, well, I got to reinvent the wheel again. What am I going to do to kind of make my images stand out and do something different? And that's the job. So yes, I agree with you, but at the same time, I think that if you are doing that, if you are pushing forward and kind of trying new things and putting it out there and offering something unique, then I think usually you're going to be okay. Like, as long as you're offering something unique that you can't get anywhere else,
that's right.
I think you're going to be okay. Yeah,
unique and a great experience, and it sets your part already. It sets your part already. I think it's only going to even more so set your part going forward.
I just think science fiction. We'll wrap this up now, and thanks for letting me go along with this, guys. I think we'll things will start becoming clear, and this is me putting on my sort of tech hat, right, of what I think's gonna happen. I think that whole scenario of having this artificial Bob that has its own artistic sensibilities, I think that's going to happen. And I think there will be this world at some point in the future, because we are moving to a distributed work culture anyway, right? That in a Zoom meeting, what's to say there's one of these things can just show up in there with its what do you call it, Unreal Engine rendered body, inside of the Zoom with its artificially generated voice and talking photography and doing all the things, right? Then we would never know. We'll never know the difference, at some point in the future. And how do we deal with that? So beyond dealing with, is it AI or is it not? I think the next level up from there, is it human or is it not? And who am I dealing with? And do I care? Right? I'm never going to meet you in the first place. Can you do the job? Yeah, you can do it. Here's my, PayPal. Go for it. Make the thing.
But as this tech evolves, it's not just this one thread, which is kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at this one kind of thread, as in, stand there, press button, right? I do think that there's going to be a lot of branches off from this in terms of creating other jobs that will then create other avenues. We can talk about this another time, but just one example of that. This year, I was commissioned to help somebody to add dynamic lighting in Unreal Engine. So I was using my knowledge of lighting and applying it into a virtual world. Now, I was able to do that remotely, but I'm essentially lighting this virtual world, of meta-humans, which are the humans that they're making, that sort of thing, and that's what I was doing. Now, if you said to me 20 odd years ago when I left art college, just like, yeah, that's what you could be doing. Like, what? It's no, we're going to be lighting in a virtual world for this game engine that is going to be used to light fake humans. Like, what on earth? That's just nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, though, right? That's a good point to end on, because you have that classical training and understanding of lighting, exposure, what these different dials and widgets do when you're trying to create or capture an image, versus just putting in a prompt and having it generate something. You understand how to do that kind of stuff, which means people that are building these virtual worlds are going to hire you because you understand the intricacies of light versus something that's just kind of replicating something that it saw and not intrinsically understanding how it got to that point. So that's
I think you've got to be open to selling your knowledge and experience as well as selling your final product, right? And I think that you know, sometimes we can be kind of, you know, just all focused on that final product, right? When you realize that you know what you have, what you've built up, your knowledge and experience does also have value as well, you know. So I think we've got to be more open to seeing that.
It still rings in my ear what you said earlier in the conversation, Jake, about putting our humanity more on display as a differentiating factor from these AI generated things, you know, and how important that is to show that, hey, you know, behind the scenes, I'm actually making this thing by hand, you know, and here it is. And that's why it costs this much, you know, versus mass marketed something. I think that is key, right, for a lot of people.
And it's always been at that.
We all have this humanity thing now. Show it as your stamp of authenticity, right?
Yeah. And I think you've got to be putting yourself out there as just, you know, like just a photographer. I know I'm being harsh there, but you know, trying to see yourself as this artist rather than a photographer, because I think that meaning is kind of getting a little bit diluted now. And look, I've done this in the past, and I would encourage anybody to do this. But you know, go into like any major, you know, city and go into a posh art gallery, you know, brush your hair or something or go in there, but go in there and kind of inquire about a piece of art and watch how they sell that piece of artwork to you. Because they're not going to go, oh yeah, it's this, you know, like the canvas is actually got, you know, 4 really nice bits of wood and the paint that they used was actually this paint. They're not fucking talking about that. They're talking about the artist. They're going to tell you the story about the artist. They're going to tell you about what they were doing and where this was painted and the story behind the artist, behind the painting. They're not selling you the product.
100%.
They're selling you the person behind it, right? And if you go in there and these people are masters at it, you know. And I've done it in. I mean, I did it in Banff a few years back. Went in there and that sort of thing. And like the way that they do it, and you can do it here in London or wherever. But the way that they do it, it's really useful because you should be selling yourself in that way, right? The way that those gallery owners are selling that artwork, that's how you should be selling yourself, not just the product that you're putting out there.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect. Alastair, any last thoughts before we end this?
No, I think that was a great way to wrap it there, Jake. 100% agree with that. You know, it's the vision, the conceptualization, the creation, but ultimately the person behind it all that, as you say, they're experts at selling it. So yeah, it's a great thing. Go visit any gallery and see how they sell it. Great way 100%. To end.
Jake Hicks, any parting thoughts before we shut this off? And also, where should people go to connect with you, learn from you, talk to you, etc.?
Thank you. Yeah. jakehicksphotography.com. Yeah. All roads lead there. And I'm doing, like I've, you know, kind of alluded to throughout this, you know, doing a lot of online training with people, which has been great. It's kind of something that I started during lockdown with, you know, people across the world. And it's been, you know, it's taken off. Yeah. So I do a lot of online workshops with people all over the world, as well as mentoring and feedback sessions and that sort of stuff, which has been great, you know, to see how other people around the world work and kind of teach them from home. So that's been good to check that out. Online workshops on there and online mentoring on my website.
All right. Very cool. And I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes for this episode. Thank you both. This has been a much too short and too long at the same time conversation. So we could have gone on forever with this. Thank you both for coming on here. Especially thanks to you, Jake. Appreciate you doing it.
Pleasure. No, always happy to come on. Yeah, always.
Yeah, we'll do this more often, especially in this kind of roundtable format. I think this will become more of a fixture on This Week in Photo, where we do this kind of open conversation versus the one-on-one stuff so often. So we'll leave it right there. Thank you both, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
This is TWiP.